Many years ago, a wise man once said, Weezer is the Sonic the Hedgehog of music. And though that may require a certain level of autism to understand, you clicked on the video, so you probably have it. I mean, it all fits together so perfectly, doesn't it? They both started out with their best stuff in the early 90s. They went downhill fast in the 2000s. And even though they've arguably made a comeback since then, their legacy is basically a giant meme at this point. But here's the thing, what if it didn't have to be that way? What if we could go back in time and make one little change that would completely rewrite Weezer's history for the better? I know, it sounds crazy, but if we do this right, we can erase Beverly Hills, Can't Stop Partying, and maybe even the Wuggy.
The Weezer Snuggie, the blanket that has sleeves. The Weezer.
I'm just kidding, the Wuggy is awesome. But here's the question. What moment do you travel back to if you want to fix the Weezer timeline? There are a lot of questionable moments in their history, but deep down, I think we can all agree that there's only one real answer. Everybody knows that in 2001, Weezer released the Green Album, which was a huge success for the band. But even though it performed well on the charts, it also caused a permanent divide in their fan base, because it was the beginning of Weezer selling out and moving in a popular direction. But before the Green Album ever came out, there was a different album in the works, a scrapped third album that would have come out in the late 90s if Rivers had decided to go through with it. You can call it the Sonic Extreme of the Weezer catalog, except, you know, not a steaming pile of crap. But seriously, in my opinion, the songs from this album were so good and filled with potential that it could have been a masterpiece. So buckle up, because I'm gonna put the spirally clock thing on the screen now, which means that we're going back in time to the moment that it all went wrong. The year that Weezer entered the bad timeline, 1997. As Weezer's Pinkerton tour was coming to an end, Rivers Cuomo was in low spirits, because even though he was finally having lots of sex like a big boy rock star, his new album was a failure. The world had said that Pinkerton sucked, and to him, that meant that the success he found with the Blue Album might have just been a fluke. Maybe he wasn't actually a good songwriter. Maybe the first album only sold well because of the Buddy Holly music video. But insecurities or not, he was still determined to try and rekindle the success that Weezer had found in 1994. And so on August 17th that year, just as the Pinkerton tour finished, he wrote this in his diary: "Going home. I got 9 months to come up with 10 songs." Now, Rivers may have been feeling down, but he had a plan up his sleeve. If everyone hated his approach to Pinkerton so much, then for the next album, he would just do the opposite. Instead of complex chord changes and song structures, he was gonna keep things simple and catchy. Instead of raw and emotional lyrics, he was gonna keep them lighthearted and ambiguous. And instead of singing about masturbating to 18-year-old girls, he was gonna not sing about masturbating to 18-year-old girls. I know I joked about that in my last Weezer video, but it's surprisingly hard not to bring up. And so with this new plan of his, Rivers started writing songs. Prettiest Girl in the Whole Wide World, Lover in the Snow. But just as he was getting into the swing of things, he hit a major problem. His self-esteem as a songwriter had gotten so low after the failure of Pinkerton that he couldn't tell if his new songs were actually good or not. And that made him hesitant about using any of them on a potential new Weezer album. Yeah, you heard me right. There was a time when Rivers Cuomo was afraid of screwing up Weezer's legacy with bad songs. Back then, Rivers was so nervous about ruining Weezer's legacy any further that he decided to start a completely new band instead, a band that he called Lovely. Well, technically he started 2 bands, but I already made a video about the other one, so you can go watch that if you want to know more about Homie. But Lovely was a drone rock band inspired by the rise in popularity of the genre. And like with every other Rivers Cuomo project where he explores a new genre, it pretty much just sounds exactly like Weezer. I mean, there's some mild drone influences, I guess, but these songs are basically just Weezer songs. But the real benefit of starting a new band for Rivers was that it gave him an outlet to perform his new songs in front of an audience without having to worry about Weezer's reputation being on the line. Within a month of that August 17th diary entry, Rivers had already completed 6 songs for the project. And with more than half an album's worth of material finished, he was ready to test them out. So we got a band together with members from the Shods and Stompbox, including Weezer's future bassist Mikey Welsh, and booked a show under the name The Rivers Cuomo Band. I don't know why he didn't use the name Lovely, but we're not going to talk about it because I don't know. But on September 26th at the Bears Place in Cambridge, Massachusetts, fans got to hear their first taste of what might be the future of Weezer. The songs were immediately met with positive reception, which is not at all surprising because it was 1997, so Rivers was still in God mode when it came to his songwriting. In fact, the reactions to his new songs were so positive that they were officially in contention for Weezer's next album, the album that Rivers would never release. Because I think it's a crime that there are more Weezer fans who know We Are All on Drugs than there are who know Baby, we're gonna dive into some of those songs right now in a little something that I like to call a lesson in Weezer. One of the coolest things about the songs that Rivers was writing in 1997 is how simple they were. Think of the average Weezer song from the 90s, like My Name is Jonas, for example. Specifically the verses that go, "Come sit next to me, pour yourself." I want you to notice how the chords in that verse are following the root notes of the melody. Come sit next to me, pour yourself some tea. It's a pretty standard style of songwriting that you'll find in almost every Weezer song. But in 1997, Rivers was actively trying to simplify his music as much as possible. And so with many of those songs, he cut out almost everything. Instead of having multiple chords that follow the root notes of the melody, he'll just have one chord playing throughout the entire verse. To give you an idea of how different that sounds, this is what My Name is Jonas would sound like if it only used one chord. Things were better then, once but never again. Notice how it creates a very different kind of tension in the song, because instead of waiting for the melody to resolve like you usually would, it leaves you waiting for the song to change sections, making the chorus feel more significant. And that's exactly the type of vague bullshit that a song analysis channel on YouTube would say, so that's how you know I'm really good at explaining this stuff. Well, that little tension trick is exactly what Rivers does with his 1997 masterpiece, Baby. Baby uses an arpeggio of a single chord throughout the entire first verse, which contrasts with the winding, lullaby-esque melody that Rivers sings over top. But despite the lack of a big, loud chorus like most Weezer songs have, the impact comes from when we finally hear that first change. But that's just the start of the song. With each verse and chorus, the arrangement builds. The drums come in, the lead guitar starts adding little licks of flavor to the arrangement. A bass line gets added in, but only sparingly, as if it was designed to accent everything else happening in the song. Over the course of its 6-minute runtime, the song slowly builds into this giant, beautiful, coom-inducing orgasm of sound that is essentially the late 90s equivalent of Only in Dreams. Some say the song was named Baby because 4 women left the venue pregnant after Rivers played it for the first time. But that can't actually be true because no woman has ever attended a Weezer concert before. But hopefully, after hearing the immaculate divinity that is Baby, you see why I think this album should have been released. But for any skeptics out there, I want to assure you that this would not have just been a one-song fluke, because pretty much every song from this project lands somewhere between good and great. I won't get into Lover in the Snow or Prettiest Girl in the Whole Wide World because those songs have already been released on Rivers' demo albums, which means that I can't really show long clips without getting copyright claims. But considering that you've made it this far into the video, I'm gonna assume that you have enough Weezer autism to have heard at least one of them before. And if you haven't, well, you should, because both are amazing. But there are still 2 other tracks that I like to bring attention to, and those are Rosemary and Little Sister. Rosemary, which you've probably heard playing in the background of many of my videos, is easily one of my favorite songs that Rivers has ever written. Much like Baby, it has a very simple structure that builds as it goes, but what really makes this one shine is its beautiful melody, particularly in the chorus. It's simple yet elegant, and the choice to have the melody descend before building onto the instrumentation in the second verse is simply genius. In my opinion, this is what perfect Rivers Cuomo songwriting sounds like. And it even has that one chord tension trick that I was talking about right at the end of the song with the final chorus. Now, as for the other song, Little Sister, let's just say that I have a different reason for why I want to talk about it. I mean, it's definitely a good song, no doubt about that, but it's the subject matter that makes it especially juicy. Because this song was written by Rivers in response to a mini scandal that had broken out just after Pinkerton. Remember how I said that after Pinkerton, Rivers was finally having big boy sex like a real rock star? Well, apparently, the women he was having sex with were not impressed by his perverted, Asian fetishizing ways. And so they created a website where they would share creepy stories about meeting him as a way of exposing his behaviors to the world. It's the kind of thing where if this had happened today, he would probably have been canceled pretty hard. And you know, Rivers, he didn't like this website one bit. In his own words, it exposed things about him to the world that he wouldn't even want his mom to know. And so, of course, in classic Rivers fashion, he wrote a song about it. pretty solid tune, and I would definitely recommend listening to it if you haven't heard it before. But it's also a good example of how Rivers was shying away from that personal lyrical style of Pinkerton and moving back into the more metaphorical direction of Blue. Before I go on any further, there is something I gotta admit. Not every song from this new batch was good. There is one track that I absolutely cannot stand, because to me it sounds like Rivers is doing a terrible Oasis impression. And that song is called 1000 Years. Ugh, God, it's just so awful. But even with the one dud track, there were still 5 or 6 great songs from this new batch of music that Rivers had written, which is about half of an album's worth of material. Now, if Rivers had finished this album, I believe the track list could have looked something like this. If you're wondering where those other song titles came from, go watch my homie video, because I'm not going to explain that shit all over again. Plus, I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to entice you guys to binge my content so that the algorithm likes me better or something. So, go do that after this video. But we're getting sidetracked here. The point is that with this track list, Weezer could have released another masterpiece album in the 90s. It would have been accessible, yet fresh and well written, just like the Blue album. And I believe that not only would it have been a huge success, but also that it could have fixed the Weezer timeline. Because with the success of that album 3, Rivers would have realized that Weezer's initial success was not a fluke, and that he truly was a good songwriter. And then maybe, just maybe, Rivers would never feel the need to break down every aspect of popular music by creating the catalog of riffs, which essentially turned him into a songwriting robot during the early 2000s, hence the lack of emotion on the Green album. And from there, everything would be different. Maybe Rivers would decide to make the music that he wants to make, instead of just making what he believes will sell best. There would be no Beverly Hills, no Lil Wayne collab, no meme legacy, possibly a girl or two at one of their concerts, maybe even a black guy. This could have been a whole different Weezer, a better Weezer, a Weezer that doesn't have 50-year-old men writing songs about being in high school. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, Rivers never released that third album. Instead, he only lost more confidence in his songwriting and wouldn't emerge again until 3 years later with the summer songs of 2000, leading us down the history that we know today. But for what it's worth, even though in this timeline Weezer has become the Sonic the Hedgehog of music, I'm still happy that they've continued to exist over the last couple of decades. Because for every Ratitude and Black that we've gotten over the years, we've also gotten albums like Fall, Winter, White, and OK Human. Hell, even albums like Van Weezer make for pretty enjoyable listens. He's quite the gentleman. And if I'm being honest here, there's no guarantee that switching the timelines would actually stop Rivers from devolving into the lovably cringe rock star that we know him as today. I mean, come on. Look at this guy. He probably never stood a chance. So do I wish that Weezer released the lovely songs back in 1998? Yes, absolutely. And do I want to hear what the future of Weezer would have sounded like had they gone down that alternate timeline? Hell yeah. But would I rather have an alternate future Weezer than no Weezer at all? Of course not. Because cringe or not, this band has given me a lot of joy and inspiration over the years that I wouldn't trade for anything. Hell, this whole channel wouldn't even exist if I hadn't decided to make a video about them after they released Winter. So yeah, there may be other bands out there that have a much better legacy than Weezer does. And yes, they really have become the Sonic the Hedgehog of music. But at the end of the day, I still love them all the same.